All right. Good morning, all. We're lucky enough to have Mr. Jimmy Cain, an old-time student of mine a long time ago, play-by-play corporate events with the Worcester Red Sox. Jimmy, pleasure. I appreciate you dialing in. Want to kind of kick it off and talk about what you do and your journey and your day-to-day.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So it's been an interesting journey from my days at Malden Catholic with you teaching freshman bio. I ended up going to Emerson College after graduating from MC. About a week after I graduated, I moved down to Bradenton, Florida, and I worked for the Bradenton Marauders, single A team of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and that sort of started this journey. It's funny when I was in college, I wanted to be like the next Scott Van Pelt on Sports Center or something like that. But I knew that I would have to start at the bottom of the barrel and go work for a TV news station in, Idaho or somewhere in Vermont, somewhere in East Bumblebeep, USA, right? So that's kind of it. I took a step back and I was like, I don't know if I really want to do that. So I kind of had a bit of a midlife crisis like halfway through my senior year of college, which, for those of you that may be watching this that are kind of in the same boat, like that's okay to not have everything figured out by the time you're 21, 22. Um, at Emerson, our TV news station every year would go down and cover various events like the Super Bowl, elections. They'd also go to spring training. So I was fortunate enough to be part of the group that went to spring training a couple of years. And it was through that trip that I ended up getting this first job in Bradenton, where I went down and I was in charge of a lot of PR stuff, press releases, writing game recaps, things like that. Then after a few weeks on the job, I got my first crack at announcing games on the air. And in that first week of doing games, I kind of had this, light bulb going off in my head moment where I thought, this is what I want to do. I'm making $8 an hour, but I don't care. I'm getting paid to sit here and talk about baseball. So from then on out, I kind of wanted to see where this path would take me. And here we are about, 10 years later. After a year in Bradenton, I ended up working for the then Pawtucket Red Sox. Of course, we've now moved to Worcester. I started in the sales office there and kind of, weaseled my way into the broadcast booth and kind of worked my way up the ladder year after year, doing more and more games on the radio to now where I'm one of the, I guess, primary guys calling games on TV and radio, traveling with the team throughout the season. So still do ticket sales to pay the bills and my mortgage and all that fun stuff. But, that's in a nutshell, in a few minutes, kind of where I've gotten to where I am now.
Again, I love this. We always talk, Carly and I always talk, folks will say, uh, I need a strategy in terms of getting into the business and stuff like that. A couple of points you talked upon, and I tell them all the time is like, look, get outside your comfort zone. If you have to travel like you did down in Florida, like I had mentioned to you, I was in Vegas, Michigan, Colorado, and Alabama. After that to kind of expand out. But the key thing that you said, and we mentioned the word sales, and they kind of shy away from it. Talk about that in terms of why that's essential if you want to work in the pro or the college side, that you need to kind of crack into that. And it's not so bad because you're selling a fun product.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I remember one of my former bosses with the Paw Sox and then Woo Sox, Rob Crane, who I think you've had as part of
Yeah, yeah,
this. Rob's with the Celtics now. He used to say that exact same thing. He said, "Look, it's not like we're selling insurance, right? We're
yeah,
selling an experience. We're selling baseball tickets. This should be fun. It's something that's not boring, like you said." So it's definitely one of those ways to get your foot in the door in this industry if you want to work in sports. In all honesty, I mean, it's not for everybody, but it is one of those things where you don't need, and you see these job postings all the time. Oh, you need X amount of years of experience. You really don't in a
yeah,
role like that at the minor league level, whether it's minor league hockey or the G League or minor league baseball. It's really more about the attitude, that go-getter mentality. And decision makers, employers are sitting there when they sift through resumes and applications and even interviews. That's when they'll get a sense of, okay, is this person right for this job? Because we
yeah,
can teach them the skills, we can
yeah,
teach
yeah,
them how to sell, because it's not rocket science.
yeah, yeah.
It's, does this person have the personality, the mentality, all those intangibles to go out there and sell? And if you've got all that, those intangibles, I mean, that's going to give you a leg up. And then from there, the sky's the limit.
Now, on the sales, like I had mentioned before, when I was with the Las Vegas Stars, we had the old phones, the rotary phones, and the yellow pages. In terms of sales now, you talked about they'll kind of train you for that. Any advice you'd give to our students on knowing Salesforce or what the Woo Sox or minor league teams will help provide you with in terms of the sales experience?
Yeah, so one of the unique things about us is that we were bought a couple years ago by Diamond Baseball Holdings.
Yes, yeah. Jeff Eisman,
And
he
they've
was yeah,
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 that's right. And they've
yeah,
bought upwards of, I think, 40 teams now. So when it comes to the sales end of it, we are all under the same CRM called DBH 360. So we have the ability to see if there's a particular account that also does business with another team, like, for example, whether it's a school or university like in the Northeast that also may go to a Portland Sea Dogs game or a
yeah,
New Hampshire Fisher Cats game, and maybe getting some intel from their sales reps as to what they're looking to do. So that's one area of it. But I would also say, just in terms of how it has changed in my time doing this, I mean, a lot of people, it's since COVID, not too many
yeah,
people are in the office. So, there's the old adage of like hammering the phones, and there's still part of
yeah,
that where like you're making cold calls and whatnot. But, a lot of people aren't at their desks, they're working remotely, things like
yeah,
that. So, a lot of people are bound to answer an email more so than a phone call.
yep.
They encourage us to even text people from time to time and getting on text campaigns. So the tactics have definitely changed in my near decade of doing this.
Mm.
As we become like more digital and whatnot, a lot of our products are now available online where that we've all been there where like you don't want to deal with a person like us, which is totally fine. So if you want to buy your season tickets online, we've made that change over the last couple of years. So definitely, leaning into the digital, friendly aspect of it has been one of the bigger changes.
I got a bunch more. What do you have for Jimmy?
Jimmy, any challenges with the position, either currently the position you're in, or just like previous challenges getting into the sport industry, or any more advice you could give to our students?
Yeah, I mean, for what I do personally, Carly, like, I kind of wear two hats, right, with the broadcasting and the selling. So for what I do, it's definitely more challenging, but I'm not the only one across minor league baseball that does multiple things. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. I mean, everybody pulls tarp, everybody hands out giveaways, everybody does this, does that. I mean, your job title might be I'm in the marketing department or corporate partnerships or sales, but when it comes to some of those other things, I mean, everybody kind of chips in. Uh, but I mean, for me personally, it's one of those deals where I have to spend a good chunk of my day on sales, right, to hit my numbers and all that fun stuff, but also to make a living because not only do we make a salary, but commission's a big part of my earnings. So it's that motivator, that dangling carrot to try to do as well as I can in sales. But then at the same time, like, my main goal is to be a big league broadcaster someday or to be on a network like an ESPN or ABC or whatever it may be. So, trying to respect both elements of my job, it's not easy because we play 150 games. We're playing 6 days a week for 6 months and trying to manage like a personal life and all this stuff. It's not easy and
Yeah.
traveling and whatnot, but, it's about the discipline and, having that foresight of like what's at the end of the road of like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. These are the motivating factors. Um, there are long days. There's no question about it. I mean, for a typical home game, for example, like I'll get to the office no later than 11 if we're playing at like 6 or 6:30. Spend about 4 or 5 hours on sales, and then kind of shift into broadcasting mode around 3 o'clock or so. And then the games are about 2.5 to 3 hours. You end up, leaving about 9:30, and then wake up and do it all over again the next day. So you really gotta love it. There's no question about it.
No, that's great because Carly and I always talk about this. Not only she's here, she's also the rugby coach. It's a grind. The sports industry is a grind, but it's not like you said, you're not selling insurance. It's something fun. And I'm glad you brought that to the attention that, you doing this as opposed to maybe your buddies that are working at Fidelity or Wells Fargo at 5 o'clock, they check out and they can do something. You're basically it's Groundhog Day. You're grinding every single day and how important they have to understand that. The other thing you touched upon and talk about this too is, and I talk about this all the time, and I think I talked about this at MC, how important and critical the networking and knowing your audience and knowing the folks. For example, the Smitty brothers from Everett, Malden Catholic, both worked in professional sports. And now they're with New Balance. Jeff Eisman was my former boss in Vegas, and he's the owner of Diamond Holdings here. So talk about that networking and how crucial it is to get out there and spread the word.
No, it's massive, 100%. I was just talking with somebody the other day from a broadcasting perspective, and you definitely see a lot of like it's about who you know, right? Now, at the end of the day, these networks, these teams, they're not going to put underqualified people in those positions. You still have to have, the skills. You have to be able to do the job, right? But yeah, having those connections, it goes a long way, and I've just seen it so much over the past decade or so since I've been in this business where it's, hey, I know this guy that'll definitely push your resume to the top of the pile. And I'll just give you a couple of examples where really with my two jobs, it's because of my Emerson connections. So, when I got that job in Bradenton, my boss at the time was an Emerson alum. So going back to that spring training trip I was talking about, Trevor Gooby was his name. He now works for the Seattle Mariners. He was big in giving us credentials, letting us use their ballpark for stand-ups and things like that. So I worked closely with Trevor throughout really the months leading up to that week, which was spring break of 2016. And then by the end of the week, he said, "Hey, why don't you come down and work for us?" And at the time, I just blew him off. I was like, "No way. That's a different story." But I ended up getting that job. So that was sort of like the Emerson connection that got me that job. And then the year after that, when I got the Paw Sox job, I initially applied for a broadcasting internship and had an interview, didn't end up getting the job. But then about 2 weeks later, I got an email out of the blue from a woman named Jackie Dempsey, who was the special assistant to our team president, Dr. Charles Steinberg. And for any Red Sox fans out there, definitely know who Dr. Charles is. I mean, he's been around the game forever, right? So I get this email and I'm thinking like, what the hell's going on? Like, this guy wants to talk to me. Well, it turns out that Jackie and Charles one day, because Jackie was the internship coordinator, they were sifting through resumes and they happened to see Emerson on my resume because the semester after I graduated, Dr. Charles became a professor in the sports comm department at Emerson. So he's I need to sit down and talk to this kid, just figure out what's going on. So that led to him and I meeting at a Starbucks on Brookline Ave and kind of told him my whole life story. And then that's when he said to me, "Look, really the only thing I have for you right now is an opening that's full-time in ticket sales." And the one thing that he says he said to me, and I tell folks all the time, is that it's better to be in the game than it is to be on the bench.
Correct.
So for me, that kind of, that was all I needed to hear. Again, I had no experience selling anything, but he had also said, "Look, I'll vouch for you at any broadcasting opportunities, whether it's our pregame show, interviews, whatever it is, just to give you some reps and to help you out." And he definitely did. There's no question about that. I'm in a debt of gratitude to him. So getting back, long story short, to your question about connections, because, those connections of Emerson on my resume, that definitely helped me with the two jobs that I have now. So crucial.
Any tips you have? So for an aspiring student going into the sports industry in terms of the networking, like we talked about the baseball winter meetings. I like the fact that you talked about highlighting, where you went to college. Anything else that kind of a jockey for position to try to get into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, cold outreach, it happens to me all the time. I get, people who reach out via LinkedIn that want to chat and connect. The big thing I always tell people is that you don't want it to be a transactional relationship or a one-way street, right? Where, every time you get a notification on your phone from, Joe Schmo, it's an eye roll of like, "Oh, what's this kid want now?" That's bumps you down to the bottom of the pile. So, I make it a point to, with my connections to whether it's, with Trevor, for example, with the Mariners, they just got bounced in Game 7. I sent him a note the other day saying, "Hey, tough way to end the season, but, a great year." So keeping those touch points and, doing that around the holidays as well, just so that it's not every time I'm reaching out to somebody, it's, "Hey, do you have a job opening?" or, "What's going on?" So but that I think is crucial. That's something I believe in strongly, is making sure that these connections are not transactional
Yeah,
relationships.
yeah, no.
But the winter meetings is a big one. There's no question about that. I have never been to the winter meetings. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be where I am without going.
Mm,
But that's definitely a big opportunity to network with people. There's no question about that. And you'll see teams have job fairs.
yeah,
We have job fairs with the Woo Sox usually around January or so. But that's a good way to meet people. I know we also go to various job conventions and schools and things like that. Set up a table to interact with people. So
yeah.
that's a good way to get your to name the face type of deal with people too. So yeah, I mean connections are just so big. I mean it's just it's
Yep.
the more people that you can connect with and the more people that know who you are, that's just going to give you a leg up.
Hot topic that Carly and I are working on right now, sports analytics. We're designing a course right now. Talk about that, how critical it is, and then the job market in sports data and analytics.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely impacted both of my areas of my job. I'll start with sales and going back to our CRM with Diamond Baseball Holdings. We just had a ticket sales meeting this past week where our head of ticket sales, stressed the importance of us, logging our activities and making sure our notes are detailed in there based off our conversations with,
Mm,
clients, because a lot of strategic decisions are made by people in the back offices based off the data that gets
yeah,
inputted in the CRM. And there's so much that we've seen the last couple of years of like they break it down of okay, typically these groups book between November and February, or we see new business sales really spike in April and May. So it's really kind of broken down in that way.
yeah,
And also of like the time of day to reach out to people when people are more likely to answer the phone or to reply to your email. So it's really gotten down to the nitty gritty
yeah,
because of what the folks in like the analytics aspect of DBH looking at some of this data and our activities are doing,
yep,
but also when it comes to the baseball of it what I do in terms of broadcasting. I mean, I can go on and on about the impact of analytics on the sport itself, but that's going to do none of us any good.
yeah,
But it's something that I have had to embrace, and I'm 31 years old. I mean, I don't think I'm like this ancient dinosaur, but I still look at traditional batting average in baseball and some of those numbers. But you see some crazy analytics out there now. But I go back to I don't know if you've seen Moneyball with
yeah,
Brad
yeah, yeah,
Pitt,
yep,
but
yep,
he's got a line where he says you have to adapt or die, and that was
yeah,
back in 2002 when they
yeah,
started
yeah,
coming out with these analytics. They were at the forefront of it, so I look at it the same way in that when I'm announcing a game, like I have to incorporate some of these numbers, but it also does me no good if I can't explain them myself.
mm,
So I have to do my due diligence, my homework to understand, okay, what is X WOBA or what are these crazy names for stats these days? But there are people out there that pay attention to these things, right? So I have to strike that balance of like trying not to be too much diving into pitch usage and
yeah, yeah,
spin rate and all this stuff
yeah, yeah.
versus the eye test, the traditional numbers and metrics. So it's definitely something I've had to adjust to in recent years and trying to add those elements, whether it's building out graphics for our TV broadcast that show those numbers or just in
Yeah, yeah.
what I say on the air. So I mean, it's had a big impact.
Awesome. Any other
yeah.
good advice? Um, Last question. Well, I get two. What advice would you give to our graduate sport leadership students going into the sports industry?
I would say never say no to any opportunity because you
Yeah, yeah.
just don't know what doors may open if you take that path.
Mm,
Um, I've had conversations with folks that are coming up through the broadcasting industry lately, and the one thing I've sort of realized is that maybe in hindsight it was a bit naive for me because I only had 1 year of broadcasting experience in minor league baseball. I had
yeah,
played baseball through college and whatnot. I knew I wanted to get into that. And when I took the Paw Sox job, I understood that this has been a great, I guess, hotbed or whatever phrase you want to use for, or launching pad, I guess, for sending announcers to the big leagues. I mean,
yeah,
we've
yeah.
had a great tradition of, guys going on to major league teams, NBA teams, networks, you name it. So I wanted to just get my foot in the door, however possible. And I knew that when given the opportunity, I wouldn't screw it up, which again is probably foolish of me for someone who was 22, 23 at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
But I mean, that's just how confident I was in my knowledge of the sport and my ability to do it, and just my passion and drive to want to do it. Where again, just wanted to put myself in the best position possible to get to where I am now, to hopefully get to, calling games for the Boston Red Sox or whatever team it is in the big leagues at some point in the future. So, I definitely took a leap of faith there, where, wanted to make sure I could have that opportunity at some point, and that would give me a leg up on someone who's applying to an open job from another organization, right? It's like, I'm here, so why not, bump me up the ladder? And fortunately, to this point, knock on wood, like that's kind of worked out for me with this team. So I think that's the biggest thing is just, you know, when you're presented with an opportunity, especially early on in your career,
Yeah,
you don't want to be a no person. It's like that Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man, from 15 years ago, where he says yes to
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Like you kind of want to be that person because that's how you'll win people over. And like when you do get that opportunity, if you're an intern or if you just start out, it's like, hey, Johnny, could you run down and hand out bobbleheads at gate A? Yep, got it. Like, and then at the end of the season, when it comes time for promotions and things like that, like when you're going over your performance review, I mean, people are going to remember those things of like, oh yeah, no, he was always there, first one to help pull the tarp on and off the field. Like, there are times you have tarp pulls at 6 in the morning for a 4 o'clock game, and you know, those people that show up, it's like that gets remembered and people get shout outs and they get spotlighted in our front office meetings. So, I guess a good way to put it, which is fitting for you and I, is like the plus ultra side of it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
From
yeah, yeah,
MC
yeah.
back in the
Above and
day, like
beyond. Yeah,
those plus ultra go getter people like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
you know, that's going to give you a leg up.
What's the again, I've traveled quite a bit. One of my favorites is Pensacola, the Blue Wahoos. Summertime, that gets pretty toasty. What's
Yeah.
the most interesting place you've been to in terms of the ballparks?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question. And it's funny, we have this conversation all the time. Me and other announcers in the league, and also like my announcer colleagues with the Woo Sox. Like we grade it differently because it's like our experience versus like the players. Like,
Yeah,
it's so hard. I mean, we've been to some really cool spots. Like we're gonna go to Nashville this year. I've never been to Nashville. That's gonna be very interesting. I would tell you that a lot of our bus trips, like the regular spots, we go to Buffalo,
yeah, yeah,
Rochester, Syracuse, Scranton. Those kind of get old.
yeah, yeah,
Our
yeah.
flight trips, like the Jacksonvilles, are kind of fun. I would say the most interesting spot that we've been to so far is Charlotte. That's a beautiful ballpark. I mean,
Yeah,
that's like
yeah,
a
yeah,
major city. We were
yeah,
there
yeah.
last year.
Yep.
So getting to experience that, we've also been to Louisville. That was a lot of fun a couple years
Yep.
ago. Ballpark was kind of but we look at it differently. It's like, all right, is the booth spacious enough? Do
Yeah,
we have
yeah, yeah.
enough? What's the line of vision? Things like that when we
Yep.
travel. But it really is cool to see, how other teams do things. How much is a hot dog, right? Walking around the concession stands
Yeah,
compared
yeah,
to
yeah.
us. What do they
Yep.
do well? What promotions work for them?
Yeah, yeah.
So, St. Paul's another one. We went there this year for the first time. That used to be an indie ball team forever.
Yep.
And they've still kind of kept some of those gimmicky things that made them
Yeah.
such a successful indie ball team. But they draw very well. So, that's the other thing too is, being privileged enough to travel and call
Yep.
the games on the road. You kind of take mental notes of like, okay, well, they do this. This seems to work out. It gets people to the ballpark on like a Thursday where, we may have issues on Thursdays in April or
Yeah,
May,
yeah.
whatever. So, having those anecdotes to share with our staff coming back,
Mm.
I think is pretty insightful as well. But yeah, been to some interesting places so far in my career.
Jim, pleasure. Appreciate it. Would you mind if any of our students have questions, can they reach out to you, I guess, via LinkedIn or via email to kind of pick your brain on the sports industry?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all. Email is jlkeen 15, JLCAIN 15 at Gmail. Can find me on LinkedIn. Happy to chat.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no doubt.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.